Hello, everyone. I'm going to give you a chance to kind of get settled and get connected before we get started. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Melissa Trebwasser. I am from Hillsborough County, Florida, which is Plant City, Tampa area. I actually live in Plant City, but no one knows where that is, so Tampa. My email is here, but I am going to share a link at the end that has this PowerPoint PDF in a Google Drive, so that if there's anything here that you would like to take back, you have that option, but I'll share that at the end. So STEM is lit. It's all about ways that we can connect and tie in STEM with literature and our virtual students, particularly. I mean, this can easily be transferred over into all of our, brick and mortar kiddos, but we have in Hillsborough both going on right now, and I'm sure you guys do too, wherever you are located. The one thing that I will preface it is I tell the kids ahead of time to kind of make a little container of recyclables so that this isn't something that they're having to go out and dig for as it comes up. So I have the kids start by saying, hey guys, get a box of things that you can start to keep as recyclables. And I always give them a list of things. So that's just kind of the way that I go with this. All right, so let me move the chat out of the way. Sorry, usually I have a training partner with me, but this time I do not. So please feel free to unmute yourself and just stop me as I'm going. If I can get my slide to switch, there we go. So science literacy, I really like this quote. It's really, I'm going to let you read it for yourself, but it's really about creating those citizen scientists. What do we want them to know? How can we empower our students? I mean, right now, there's a ton going on in our world and our kids pick up on everything. So I just really like this quote. And I think it's a great way to start our presentation in tying in science literacy, even though we are not necessarily literature teachers or ELA teachers. We still read in science, we still learn from it, and we want to expose our students to all kinds of components. So as we're going through, these are the reasons that I find this extremely powerful and important. Engagement. We're going to capture those kids who may not be science kids yet. So we can pull them in. And even if they're not, maybe they're not literature kids, so we can connect those kids. So we're going to bring it together. Maybe you have a teacher that is more comfortable with one or the other. Providing contents for our students to build on. Creating cross-curricular connections, of course, for that, STEM component with math and science, engineering, but also just that literature piece. We're going to build some background knowledge for kiddos, motivate them, give them a purpose. If we don't have kids with a purpose, they're not going to do it. And exposure and confidence. So these are just some of the reasons that I like to bring in. I love to read. I love books. I do not like teaching ELA. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a selfish reason too. I like to bring that in and work with kids. So in Hillsborough County, this is the module that we follow, or our design cycle for the engineering processes. We just like to push that out. So in case you're in a different county, you may not have this opportunity, but on Mondays in our district, we do Inquiry Mondays, and that is generally when we do an engineering process. So a lot of times our teachers have things, but sometimes, we have that freedom to create some different components. When we went e-learning in the spring, I found that, because it was all of a sudden and so quick, I couldn't get kids engaged in science. Like, how are we going to do this? We didn't have time to prepare. This was the way. So I'm just going to kind of share some of those ideas with you today. It's more of just how we look at it, that mindset, that STEM mindset for stuff. So, and this is everything that we do is based in the NSTA frameworks for K-12 science education, just in case you're like wondering. We always start with an engineering focus, whether it's an aeronautical or a chemical engineer or structural engineer. So we always focus on that and just giving them that this is a real job. Hey, you could do this when you grow up. So we do always try to tie that in just as a real world connection. And we always give them kind of a planning sheet. So this is just kind of the way that we do it. You don't have to do it this way, but this is the way we walk through our process. I usually don't make this sheet. I have them do it right in their notebook. I'm a notebook girl, so this is just more of a template for us to follow. But I can share any of these things in case this is not something you're currently doing in your district. So one of my favorite challenges came out during e-learning, and in fourth grade, our standards learn a lot about tin can tourism and about roadside attractions and how the tourist industry impacted Florida. Honest to goodness, guys, I had no clue. That was not my area of expertise. Science, however, is my passion. So I was like, how can we bring this to life for kids? Because I can't imagine trying to teach this virtually to kids. So I came up with the idea of creating a tin can tourist challenge. So again, these are just ideas I'm going to share. And so if it's something you like, you'll have the resources later. If you want more, just let me know and I'll be happy to share additional details, but I wasn't sure what was going to be applicable to everybody. So we created a piece where we gave the kids the background. They had this big component in ELA and in social studies, but you may not be familiar of the tin can tourism roadside attractions that built up a lot of our state. So we provide the kids a little bit of background. Sometimes we give it through a small text piece. Sometimes it's connected a little bit different through like an actual novel or maybe just a snippet of science. But this piece was built more around science and social studies. So I had to give them some background. And again, this was for our e-learners. So the proposal, this is that setting the stage for them. Florida thrives or grows and develops on tourism. We need to boost the economy. Our mayor is Jane Castor, so we plugged that in there, making it relevant for the kiddos. And we gave them the purpose of bringing tin can tourism back to Tampa. So if you're looking at it through a STEM mindset, well, tin can tourism. Well, by golly, we got to make a tin can car. So that's exactly what we did. We had the kids create a tin can car. We gave them some ideas and some guidelines for them to be able to do. And again, ahead of time, we said, hey, these are some things you might want to think about. Requiring the kiddos to have certain components that we wanted them to have. And again, being safety, the sharp edges and all of that. I don't want to read the whole screen to you, but I do want to pause for just a second and let you get the gist of the guidelines. We give the guidelines to the students so they don't go off in left field or right field, that we keep them kind of in their lane, for lack of better words. So the tin can had to be able to carry the people. Eventually we added to this and they carried a trailer and they created their own roadside attraction. That was entirely the ELA part, but our part was to create the actual tin can, to design it. It had to be able to roll, so it had to be able to move. You'll notice there it says you must send a picture of your components to your teacher through Edsby. Edsby was our platform for learning last year, so that's why it says that on there. If you notice, we also told the kids, don't get rid of your car, because really, that's not the science component we want to hit. We're going to be creative. We're going to allow you to design that, to think out of the box, to build that blueprint. But, oh, and here's some different materials that we would have them come up with. So we gave them a list of these things. These were optional. They didn't have to use them, but just to get them thinking. We give this to the kids and tell them to hold on to all of these things as we're going. Right now, about 50% of our district, give or take, is virtual right now. So these are just some things that we, at the beginning of when we started having kids keep up with, anything around their house that they could hold on to. And they added to this as we went. So here's where we come in with the STEM connection. So the kids create their car, and then they're going to calculate some speed to tie in with their science fourth grade benchmark. Because remember, this is a fourth grade standard for social studies and ELA. So we're connecting it through science by having the kids go through, they're making a ramp, they're talking about the distance that it can travel. We had them calculate the speed if they could using a timer, and if they had a measuring tool. If not, We had them slow-mo video if they could, because they had a computer in front of them. Our district gave computers out that I didn't even know we had available. So we did have them do that and have them look to see as we increase the height and decrease the height of the ramp. So there were a lot of options in there. And then here's a great math connection. We had them create a road to go with it. And within that road, it could be just a blueprint of a road, but making line segments, straight angles, one ray, and obtuse. These were all things they were currently learning in math. So the idea behind STEM is Lit is really, again, making those curriculum connections, but making them meaningful and powerful for the kids. So it's not just let's create a car and let's play, but how can we get some learning from that? They loved this challenge. We had a great time with it. And the learning that went behind it. This is an informal assessment that a lot of the teachers decided to use. Instead of giving them a quiz online or taking a picture of a textbook quiz that they took, this was the assessment that they used, because the kids could go in and draw these things and label them. By golly, they had it. So here's a couple examples of some of our students. You can see they were quite creative with their design. And I love that this particular kiddo went out to the community basketball court and made their track with some chalk. So I thought that, how great was that? Entertaining. They got to go outside and play for a little bit. So just some fun pieces to share. So I'm just going to keep on going. Again, guys, please unmute yourself if there's a question that you have, or if I can explain a little bit more. I'm really just kind of trying to share a bunch of ideas that I found have worked for our virtual kiddos. I'm
learning a lot here and I appreciate it, Melissa.
Thank you. It's so hard because you're not here. I can't read faces. So
I know, but I definitely, so I just like to share real briefly that my colleague and I, because I teach pre-service teachers, I taught a science course at the same time that she taught a literacy course. And so we had them work together on a science literacy activity. I'm loving these ideas that you have, especially as better models, because some of the stuff that we received was not quite what we expected.
Oh, great. I'm glad. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. I have a ton of these, and we actually presented last year where we did only novels. So I have a lot of these, but I picked this particular one because I feel a lot of students in intermediate grades are familiar with Hatchet. It's one of my favorite books. It's a boy book, so you can hook those boy readers as well. And I'm trying to check the chat too. So, so this, I always try to give a scenario. So maybe they haven't read the book, and that's okay, but maybe I can hook a reader if that's the case, because if you can hook a student in any aspect, that's a win for a teacher. So with Hatchet, of course, we're going to tie in that whole flying the plane connection with him. But here's the basic scenario if you're not familiar with it. So he basically, he crashes his plane, he's stuck in the wilderness, and the only thing he has is, of course, his hatchet, and he's stuck in the Canadian forest. If you haven't read Hatchet with your kiddos, highly recommended, but Brian's Winter, the what if is even better. So definitely a plug there. So there we go. So the scenario, again, it's all about setting the stage for the kids. He's gone missing in the wilderness. An eyewitness saw his plane crash. Paulson Industry, they're aeronautical engineers, and they need help designing a seaplane that can land on water. So again, tying it in, this aeronautical engineers, we would generally give the students a short snippet of what is an aeronautical engineer, because they're not going to know, most of them. And for me, honestly, every time I do this, I learn that there's a new type of engineer out there. What the difference between an aerospace and an aeronautical engineer. Who knew? They're actually very different. So I tend to give them a scenario and a situation and back it up with a real live job that they could have. Again, always providing the guidelines. What is it we want you to do? Where is our focus? And then giving them the possible materials, always options that they could have at home. So this lesson, I did do both brick and mortar and e-learning. So one I did have straw rocket launchers for, which were amazing. And so you could do a lot more with them, but you can easily do these at home just by creating those little straws that you blow off the end. So having students, I'm telling them before you can even begin, because we don't want to play. We need a purpose here, guys. You need to research and study the basic physics of flight. So at this particular point, we were already learning about forces in motion. So that's our connection science-wise. So as they're going through it, they're starting to understand that there are forces of gravity that are going to be pulling down that plane. But wait a minute, why is a plane able to fly? So we explore the other options of lift and go into some optional pieces that are not necessarily the need to know, but a nice to know and understanding of science. So you can kind of differentiate that. I give them a resource. There's a great resource on how things fly, forces of flight, and they can actually go through the creating a design through the National Air and Space Museum free. So your virtual learners who may not have any idea about how to make a paper airplane, if you're doing this at home or you don't have straw rocket launchers, can learn how to make a paper airplane. Baffles me how many kids don't know how to make a paper airplane. So this is a great resource. They can actually go through it and figure out what they're, what components they need and factors that could influence that. For some reason, I click a wrong button every single time. Also tying in Newsela. If you're not connected to Newsela, it's a great resource. They have some additional science pieces because I wanted the kids to understand the entire purpose of the wings of a plane. If they're not wide, if they're wide, they fly one way. If they're pointed back, they fly a different way. So again, giving them and setting the stage, all of this before they even develop their prototype. And you can see on the side there where those benchmark connections are. I will say it with the kids, a lot of them will start to ask so many questions. You can just tell them, you know what, let's see if we can find that. We have Myon in our district. I don't know if you guys do. It's a great tool for kids where they can go on and find books on their level. But Myon was a great resource for me to be able to find tools for kids when they would ask questions. So, I remember a big question for this one was, why aren't planes built like they were for the Wright brothers? Well, we talked about, the purpose of the plane and why, but also the design and how it really wasn't safe at that point. So I'm going to move on. I don't have examples. I apologize for that one. I don't have examples for it. Yes, Epic Books is fabulous. You're right. So another, this came about, if you are not using Minecraft, I'm going to be honest with you, I had no idea Minecraft Education and its powers. I do not work for them. I have no connections to them. However, the impact it has had on me as an educator since virtual learning took over our worlds has been tremendous. So when e-learning kind of took over, I was very attached to a group of kids and I just couldn't quite let go. Their hearts were broken. Our competitions for science were ended, and I just couldn't let go of them. So one of the things that we came up with was a STEM club. And we did this all summer long. We met Mondays for Minecraft Mondays, and on Wednesdays, we do Robotic Wednesdays, and Fridays, we did Fiction Friday, where we just talked about the book. Florida has their SSYRA reader books. This book, Gamer Squad, is one of those books. So right now, our focus is to go through each of these books and we find STEM connections. This one was so fun. So we used Minecraft Education, which in our district is free. I'm not sure if that's just for us or if it's everywhere, but it is free. They have amazing resources. But what we did is we read this book. We also used code.org. I know I'm kind of jumping around. I'm sorry. I really got excited about this one. So when we read this book, it's so much like Pokemon Go. I don't know if you're familiar with it or if you have kids that are familiar with it. It's so much like that. They go on their phone, they escape, they travel, and the monsters are real, and these kids have to go and they have to capture them. So with Minecraft, I had the kids go in and start to create a their own model of an actual monster from the book. So now we're tying it into model making and science. So this is another great piece for them to just explore. We also use code.org to create our own app because this book was prefaced with an app for the game. They have an app maker for code.org and that is free. Thank you, Amy, for putting all that in the chat. I appreciate you so much. So one of the things that we did is we created those monsters and they had to be as closely related to the details in the book. So here are their monsters and they truly blew me away. Again, I knew nothing about Minecraft, but I had a student when I started this who was so quiet and didn't really show his leadership. But through this, he took it and he's run with it. He has made videos on Microsoft Stream to share with our other students. So this is a powerful tool for some of our kids in e-learning. They have lesson plans already built in there. So just by reading the book, we created monsters. We actually created these digital monsters, and they also created regular monsters too. This was summer. I wasn't too concerned about tying it directly to benchmarks, but the model making was what I hit hard on. And we talked about why we have models in science. So that's just a quick one. A picture book, in case you don't have time to read. The Girl Who Thought in Pictures is a story about Temple Grandin. I love it because it talks about students with disadvantages. So she does have autism, and this goes through and talks about how she is able to change the world in the agricultural field. And it looks at it through her perspective. So this is a great picture book if you're not familiar with it. So I'll let you kind of read that for a second as I'm talking, but so basically impacting farm life. So the students, and this was actually a design challenge that we already had in our district for primary kids. I thought it was super hard for primary kids, so I adapted it and tied in our literature piece for our intermediate kiddos. So they are looking to create a way to have an irrigation system. This one would be a little bit trickier for that virtual learner, but it can be done. So we used a lot of tubing for this one at home, but they can easily use straws if they have them available. So they're creating a design to be able to water and irrigate a farm. And then again, if you notice that it's the same pattern, I'm working right through that whole design challenge process. We need the guidelines, we have possible materials, then we're going to brainstorm, then we're going to try it out. Again, tying in true text pieces for them to gather that background knowledge, because we don't want them just going a shot in the dark in left field and have no idea that this is a true scenario that they could actually impact our world. So again, tying it into some of our benchmarks here. And then for those kids that were stuck, we did give them a template. So every now and then throw them a bone, give them an idea and show them, but I try not to. I really want them to work through it. Part of that design challenge is being able to collaborate and reflect. I will oftentimes say, okay, if we're in the classroom, pick a spy. If a group is stuck, pick a spy. That one person gets to go walk around. They don't get to talk to any other groups and they get to see. Sometimes if we're doing a virtual thing, I will say, show one thing on your screen that might help somebody that's stuck. That way, if some kids just aren't as creative as others. So that way one kid can share an idea. And if they copy it, okay, they copy it. It's not the end of the world. That kid is going to have to work through it and problem solve just like the other kid. He just couldn't get started. And I tell the other kids, you know what? Scientists copy ideas all the time. We improve on them. It's how we build ourselves up and not go backwards, hopefully. This I stole from NSTA. Let me preface it. I created the Scamper little chart on the little boxes, which is on the left side. The right side is basically from an NSTA article. It is free on their website if you're a member, and I think if you're a non-member, it might be 99 cents. I'm not 100% sure. But Scamper's a great way to get kids to go through the process, because a lot of times we have revise and edit on our design challenge. When you talk to kids, 90% of the time, there's nothing wrong. I love it. It's great. And it's not, you know for a fact as an educator, it's not doing its absolute best. So this is what I use to get kids to move forward. So let's see if you have to do one thing through the process. Let's see if you eliminate this, can we substitute it with that? I love this tool and getting kids to think about ways to improve because they already think it's the bee's knees when it comes through. So I just wanted to share that piece with you as well. Fairy tales are probably one of the easiest things to tie it into. I think it was 3 years ago, we did a presentation just on STEM with Grimm, and every one of them were tied to fairy tales. So this is kind of one of my favorites. You know, if kids aren't able to do that, you can find a snippet on a video to show them. You can use the picture book of Alice in Wonderland. I use the Lewis Carroll version, the true version, because each version is a little bit different. So as you go through Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, I think most of us are familiar with it. The Mad Hatter has got to, the March needs to make the tea. They're all frazzled, and we need to find a way to get the tea to speed up. So setting the stage at this point. The White Rabbit's late. Please help Alice and the Mad Hatter determine the conditions needed to speed up the dissolving process. So you can, you know, if you're familiar with your 5th grade Florida standards, you already know we're going 100% dissolving of different materials. How can we speed it up? Using different size particles, stirring, heat. So all of those can kind of come into play just by setting the stage of Alice in Wonderland. And again, if you don't, you know, if you're just strictly a science teacher, show them the video or just the snippet, not the whole video, just the snippet of the video. For this particular one, I didn't go through the whole design process. I used a claims, evidence, and reasoning. So they had to create a claim that they thought the Mad Hatter should use. So should they use granules with warm water and stir, whatever, but they had to work through that. They had to create a data chart and go through that whole process. Claims, evidence, and reasoning is very hard for kids. So we modeled one and then worked through it. They were so excited about it because it made a real world connection. And no, I didn't use tea. I just used regular old hot water, but by golly, they were just as excited. And then we did have tea for lunch one day, just to try it out for fun. And we watched, Alice in Wonderland at lunchtime. That was a great celebration because, you know, kids are all about celebrating and thinking that they've earned something fabulous. But this was fun, and they truly understood each of the components because they used granulated sugar versus sugar cubes. They could stir versus not stirring, warm water versus ice water. They had timers, they had thermometers. If you do this at home, most kids have these things. They may not have sugar cubes, but you could have them increase the amount of sugar or try different types of sugar if they happen to have that. So that is an option, or just using salt in warm water versus cold water. So it can easily be modified for that e-learner or that kiddo at home, but it was a great way for kids to see that. Again, creating the guidelines, going through it with the kiddos. They must have, you know, something with temperature. They must be able to test with particle size, and then the stirring that is going to affect the dissolving rate. They're going to create, you know, the data chart. Most of our kiddos need help creating that data chart, so we would do that with them. And again, this could be tied to multiple grade levels. So maybe you're not a 5th grade teacher, but you could talk about it with 4th grade. The mass of a whole object is always the same as the parts of its sum. So thinking about sugar cubes versus regular sugar. And if you were to weigh that out, taller teacups having greater volume. So you can see that it's not, I geared this particular presentation towards intermediate, but it really can be a K-5. Piece for sure. We want our students to be exposed to that. This particular one is a little bit more of just a video clip. I'm sure you're familiar with Olaf in summer? If you're not, I'll expose you now. Maybe if my volume works.
Oh, I don't know why, but I've always loved the idea of summer and sun and all things hot.
Really? I'm guessing you don't have much experience with heat.
Nope. But sometimes I like to close my eyes and imagine what it'd be like when.
So I won't sing the whole thing for you, but you get the gist of the idea. And if you're not familiar with Olaf, but you get that he's a snowman and he loves summer. So you can see that there could be problems there. Well, this may not be tied into a literature piece. It is still connected to our STEM e-learners. So you could have the kiddos create a model of what Legos, what Olaf might look like in states of matter if he were to change because of summer. They could use Legos, they could use Play-Doh, they could actually just draw a model of what he could look like. Write a letter to Olaf explaining what he'll go through as he changes from one state of matter to another, use key academic language. And I thought that I had, oops, I guess I don't. I thought I had an actual word bank on here for kids to use, because I think that that is important. When we're going through pieces like this, we want to make sure that while we're having fun and we're connecting it to things that they're familiar with, whether it's a video clip or a book, it's okay to give them pieces to pull from, to guide their thinking and to keep them focused. Because, I mean, think about us. We get distracted very easily. So giving them a word bank to think about, oh, I need to talk about Olaf in his solid, liquid, and gas state if necessary. That I may want to think about evaporation or condensation of what could happen to him. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And again, tying in the literature component of writing this time, not necessarily of reading. But the kids love this activity and they enjoy sharing it as we're going through. So as we're doing this, we think as educators, what's our role? Really is to facilitate, just like you would in an inquiry lesson. Let them figure it out. And I provided some questions. These are just ones that we use in our district, but basically anything to get kids thinking and provide support for those that may need it. Again, like I do the Send the Spy. And if you have a kid that is flying through it, a lot of times I'll come through and be like, oh, there's a budget cut, guys. Sorry about it, but you just lost half of your materials. You pick which half you just lost. So that kid that maybe is just kind of got it flying through it a little too fast, or maybe didn't think through it entirely, or maybe you realize, oh, I should have made this a little bit more difficult. You know what? Budget cuts fix everything, guys. I'm telling you. And sometimes you just pick up your cell phone, you pretend like you're getting a real call, and they think you've lost your mind, but it works. It's great. So depending on where you are, this could be a challenge for you to fit into your day. These are just some ideas. It can be an enrichment center. If you are ELA teacher, self-contained, or if you have an ELA partner, this could be an extension from them. I was very fortunate in the classroom. I had a fabulous ELA partner and I only taught science, and both my math person and my ELA person were on board with whatever we were doing. And it was a constant communication there. So that was great. It could be a family project, especially with the e-learning, not necessarily as an added stressor, but for fun. Family STEM nights, if we ever get back to those, right? Maker spaces. And in our district this year, we actually have a STEM block. It's only twice a week for our intermediate teachers for a half hour, but this is something that we could easily plop in there for a STEM block if you happen to have that time in your district. That's really all I have today. I do want to kind of close out with a quote from one of my favorite books that I like to use, Sharon Draper, Out of My Mind. I don't think they get paid very much because they never stay very long, but they should get $1 million. What they do is really hard, and I don't think most folks get it. She's referring to her teacher in the book. So guys, I know that it's been a crazy year, but our e-learners and our virtual kiddos appreciate it. Our brick and mortar kids do too. And I do have a short little snippet I want to share from a kiddo.
I think science is important because you're gonna need science somewhere in your life when you head out into the world, and it's needed in a lot of places for a lot of jobs, and it's a fun thing to do.
What would you like to say to your science teachers?
Thank you so much for having us have this experience.
So that's just a little guy in our district that I thought what a great ending. And I am going to copy and paste the link. So I need to stop sharing. I'm sorry. Don't judge my screen here, y'all. I thought that I could do it from here, but I'm going to copy and paste 2 links. One is if you could provide your feedback. One is for the Google Drive. And I know that was super quick. I had a ton to share and I just did not want to. Amy, I think I just sent you the Google Drive. I wasn't sure if I should share with everybody or just you. And let me share also. Oh my goodness. Y'all, you can definitely tell it's a Friday, Friday afternoon. I'm sorry. Ah. I was trying to copy the feedback thing and I just can't seem to do it. This is a little embarrassing. Okay. But if you guys have any questions, I am available at just to kind of, answer those. If you have any questions, comments, I'm definitely open to comments. So. Oh, and the dogs.
This is great. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. Renewable and non-renewable resources. Off the top of my head, the only thing remotely close is I did City of Ember and we talked about alternative energy. That was really kind of it. And I don't mind. I can give you I'll put my email in the chat. If you want to email me, I can send you what I do have for City of Ember if you're interested.
I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, but you guys can keep asking questions.